friends, welcome to another session of Emotional Café. Xiomara Mayo Ingram, like every week, with another interesting topic. And today we have perseverance with your emotional growth. And this is the topic that kind of wrap it all up, because emotional growth implies so much, and sometimes even the people around us are not that happy about us growing emotionally, because of all the implications and all the consequences and all the different aspects that we start changing in our lives. But perseverance, as we said before, is a key element when it comes to emotional growth. Let's start by defining what perseverance means. And as I had said in previous sessions, perseverance means that a specific trait or quality that reflects itself on our attitude of firmness and constancy and continuity towards something. It doesn't matter what it is about, but we show that we're firm and constantly committed to whatever aspect it is that we're working on. When it comes to emotional growth, there are specific indicators that show that we are growing emotionally. Maybe your case, maybe your scenario has to do with your self-esteem, maybe with letting others decide for you, maybe not feeling capable of making your own choices and you're always relying on others to make the choices for you. Well, emotional growth, the indicator that you're growing emotionally, means that you start becoming more responsible towards yourself and you start making your own choices. You start setting boundaries for others not to come and tell you what to do, but rather than that, you think about your choices and consequences and you make your own decision. Maybe your scenery, maybe your situation has to do with fears that are blocking you from moving ahead. Then emotional growth will reflect on you identifying those specific fears and how they're blocking you. Maybe it's been those kind of learned speeches that you've heard since you were a little kid. Maybe it has to do with something that happened to you, but you identify what is the blockage and you start putting actions together to push you forward. Maybe your emotional growth situation has to do with toxic emotions. Maybe you're someone that has always been negative and whining about your life and lack of satisfaction or complaints and always blaming it on others. Well, emotional growth will reflect in your life by reprogramming yourselves with new attitudes. Being totally aware of these negative or toxic emotions and replacing them with other kind of emotions, replacing them with different attitudes. So instead of whining and complaining, you set the boundary to yourself and you always say something about gratitude or feeling grateful about something. Maybe it has to do with a toxic relationship you're in and you need to break up with this person, regardless the feelings, regardless what's going on, because you know that it's not good for you. It's not healthy for you. And emotional growth will be that you start thinking about yourself and what's best for you. And you decide to break up with this relationship, understanding the implications that it has. Maybe another scenario that is very common, maybe your emotional growth situation has to do with the fact that you have certain people in your life that are toxic for you. Maybe friends, maybe people that steal your joy, steal your happiness, people that regardless how you feel, they come and they're so negative about everything and everyone that somehow you feel like it's a burden after you've been hanging out with them. So you realize how they are negatively affecting you, how they negatively impact you. And you decide that you want to continue with your emotional growth. Your emotional growth will reflect that regardless how important these people are, you can see how they affect you and you will distance yourself, not only physically but emotionally, to the point that you detox yourself from it and then you can cope with their presence in a more healthy way for you. So as you can see, emotional growth can reflect in many different scenarios, many different situations. Maybe my limitations in a certain area are not the same that you have in a certain area. But it doesn't matter. When it comes to emotional growth, there are always certain indicators that are going to show that we are growing, that we are outgrowing those specific things or limitations, that we are setting boundaries for ourselves and others, that we are aware of how things affect us and we are more connected with ourselves and others. That's what emotional growth is about. Well, when it comes to perseverance with our emotional growth, it means that you're going to find circumstances, you're going to find people, you're going to find situations, you're going to find obstacles along your emotional growth process. And the most important thing, as I said, is to persevere, to keep your mind set on what you want to accomplish with yourself. If you want to be a more brave person, if you want to be more responsible with yourself, if you want to be assuming yourself, if you want to be making right choices, if you want to be having the appropriate attitudes, all these things will require your perseverance, because as I say, there will always be things to kind of throw you off the path towards your goal. And if you don't have a clear understanding of this, it's easy to get distracted and disconnected from what you want. It's easy to start blaming on others and start blaming your destiny and start settling for less than what you think you deserve for your own life. So when it comes to emotional growth, it's important that we understand it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens all of a sudden and you used to be in a certain way and next minute you're totally different. Emotional growth takes time. It can be painful because sometimes it takes the courage to accept the things that are not right in our lives. It takes the courage to actually look at ourselves and become responsible for the way we feel and our choices made and the results of those choices. Sometimes it's not what we want to do. Sometimes we want to continue being distracted with others and the lives they have and the things they do and the things they have accomplished and all the kind of things that will get us off ourselves in order to keep putting the spotlight on them. So emotional growth takes that courage to look at ourselves and to identify those things that we need to change in ourselves, those attitudes, those actions, those behaviors. When we put the actions together on what needs to be done in order to move forward, and how sometimes we simply give up and say, I can't. Emotional growth means that we understand it's a process and we understand it's going to be tough, but we realize that only by doing these actions and putting one foot in front of the other, we're going to be able to see the results we want. And we persevere in doing so. We keep it firm and constantly doing what needs to be done in order to enjoy our goals. So when it comes to emotional growth, again, many things can happen that will steal it from you. Many things will happen that will make you consider it twice. I've had people that I have been assisting that decide to quit halfway there, decide that they don't want to look at themselves anymore. Sometimes they consider that they're fine. Sometimes they're not liking what they're realizing about themselves. Sometimes it's easier to continue blaming and putting the responsibility on someone else. Maybe the parents, maybe the spouse or the husband or wife, the significant other, maybe the children, maybe my grandma, maybe my boss. It's easy to blame and make someone else responsible, when the truth is that emotional growth implies that I take responsibility for my own life. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, sometimes we don't like what we're seeing, and sometimes the easy way out is just to quit and ignore myself and my own needs. But I tell you this, emotional growth implies that you're committed to continue working with yourself regardless what you find, and always towards the best possible you that you can be. And when you realize this and you make that commitment with yourself, perseverance is the key element to to make it happen. Perseverance is what's going to keep you going regardless what you find out. Perseverance is what's going to keep you going when things get tough and hard. Perseverance is what's going to keep you going when others are not supporting you, because they don't want you to wake up and be connected with yourself, because therefore they won't be able to continue controlling you or manipulating you the way they need you to act. So perseverance is the key element, and that's the only way that you're going to continue in your process, getting better, becoming better, and being much more empowered with yourself. My dear friends, thank you so much for joining me. I hope this whole perseverance topic has helped you. I hope you go back to any of the previous sessions and you take notes as needed. Also, I want to remind you that you can send your questions by email, and I'll gladly include them in either my presentations or I will answer them on Facebook for you. And remember, emotional growth is a beautiful path regardless the pain that sometimes we may encounter, but it always pays off in all areas of your life. I'll see you next week.